Not a partner, but an accomplice of the enemy.
I'm very glad to meet you.
Why does Trump trust Putin more than his own intelligence agencies?
Whom should you trust and whom not? And is it possible to trust anyone? You can't trust anyone.
According to one version, it all started back in the days of the USSR. The KGB managed to get Donald on the hook using money and flattery.
As long as braggarts live in this world, we must praise our own fate.
A self-absorbed narcissist is a perfect target for intelligence agencies.
I will listen when I need to. No need to repeat things. I'm a smart person.
Trump was recruited after his weaknesses were studied, and for decades he was guided into big politics.
Many people who have truly achieved something had to swim against the current.
Have you ever really wondered why Donald Trump likes Vladimir Putin so much?
He's not only a smart person, he's a pragmatic one.
Everyone knew that Trump didn't become president just by chance. But few people talked about it out loud. It's great to be with you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Has America and the whole world become hostages to a secret Kremlin operation? One that has lasted 40 years. And who is he really? A capricious, tyrannical president? Or is he Putin's loyal puppet, Agent Krasnov? The hypothesis that Donald, the idea that Trump is not just an eccentric billionaire, but a long-term asset of Soviet and later Russian intelligence services, was considered a conspiracy theory for decades. Until facts, coincidences, and leaks started to form a chain that was just too logical. And Trump and Agent Krasnov merged into one.
But is that a fact?
No, that's not a fact.
It's not a fact?
No, it's not a fact. It's much more than a fact. That's exactly how it really was.
Even though Trump loves money very much, it wasn't easy to buy him right away. But the experienced intelligence officers didn't lose hope, since they could see the client's interest. I
fully understand that everything related to the United States provokes a certain reaction from us.
Trump's name first appears in intelligence documents back in the late 1970s during his marriage to the Czech model Ivana Zelničková. It was then that Czechoslovak intelligence, operating under the direct supervision of the KGB of the USSR, they began compiling a dossier on the American businessman with ambitions.
I believe that there are truly fortunate individuals, and certain people just have more luck in life. But there's also a saying, the more diligently you work, the luckier you get.
In March 1986, the first chief directorate of the KGB carried out Operation Chance Encounter. In New York, Donald Trump was subtly introduced to the Soviet ambassador Yuri Dubinin. He was supposed to establish contacts with the American business elite. The operation was successful, and Dubinin invited Trump to visit Moscow. This became the beginning of the recruitment process.
To succeed, you need to set yourself apart from 98% of the world's population.
In his report to the KGB officers, Yuri Dubinin wrote that Trump was quite an interesting personality and a suitable subject. After all, he possesses a whole set of necessary weaknesses. He is maniacally obsessed with money and women, and even more so with flattery and himself.
There are many different ways to build a career, but the best possible way is to be born in the right location and into the right family.
According to the Czechoslovak counterintelligence dossier, Trump's wife Ivana often spoke about Donald's growing interest in politics.
Life is a challenging and arduous journey, and people suffer painful and lasting wounds. That's why, if you want to win, you have to be tough as flint and prepared to engage in battle with your elbows and fists. The greatest success comes when you swim against the current. Yes.
From that moment on, the Trump family was under surveillance in the United States. In 1987, Trump visits the Soviet Union for the first time. Everything is presented beautifully. Talks about business, real estate, hotels, investments, and a great future. He is put up in an expensive hotel, in the Lenin Suite. It was then, in Moscow, that Trump received his codename Krasnov. This information would later be confirmed by Alnur Musayev, the former chairman of Kazakhstan's National Security Committee, In
the year 1987, I served in the 6th Directorate of the Committee for State Security of the Soviet Union in Moscow. The main focus of the 6th Directorate's work was recruiting international businessmen from capitalist countries. It was during that year that our directorate recruited a 40-year-old businessman from the United States of America, Donald Trump, under the codename Krasnov.
The codename Krasnov was chosen deliberately, taking into account the agent's excessive self-importance. Trump genuinely believed he was very handsome, a man. The choice was also influenced by Red Square, next to which the then just American businessman was staying at a hotel.
Coincidence? I don't think so.
Of course, Trump couldn't have suspected that before his trip, the KGB specialists already had a completely accurate psychological profile of him on their desk. Narcissistic, boastful, dependent on flattery, easily offended, prone to simplistic conclusions, and extremely sensitive to his own sense of importance. And also insatiably greedy for money and fame. The perfect target for influence.
As long as the greedy are alive around us, luck, we won't let go of it.
In the documents, he appeared as a confidential contact. The KGB guaranteed its agent the safety of secret cooperation and solid financial support. Upon returning to the US, Trump, unexpectedly for everyone, began to speak publicly not about investments but about politics.
Citizen Trump, the Republican candidate this morning published detailed advertisements in the 3 largest newspapers in the country to present his views on foreign policy. And one of his senior advisors reported that Trump is currently planning a significant campaign trip in October to New Hampshire, where the first presidential primaries will be held.
His associates see this as a farce, while in Moscow they are waiting for the right moment. Trump begins to criticize NATO, repeating talking points that have been coming out of Moscow for decades.
The financial burden of keeping troops in Europe is very high, and that money could definitely be better utilized elsewhere, on something better.
The wild 90s, Trump is on the verge of bankruptcy, but Kremlin money saves him. Russian and post-Soviet capital, criminal organizations, money laundering through casinos, all of this has been described many times by American journalists.
You know, it was precisely my ability to anticipate possible problems that really saved me from wasting my own energy illogically. I have always been, and will be a very cautious person, but I am not a pessimist. It's better to call it positive thinking, but with an eye on real life. In
1999, when Putin heads the FSB, interest in Trump is already being recorded as a potential political asset. And in Moscow, they seriously begin to consider the presidential ambitions of the Red Trump. Although at first, Putin easily found common ground with the sitting presidents in America. That's why it wasn't yet time for the secret agent to step onto the political stage. The day of reckoning arrived. Putin is preparing for the annexation of Crimea and the invasion of Donbass. The Kremlin understands that they will need the support of the international community, and the FSB throws all its resources into promoting Trump into the upper echelons of US politics.
Our countries are great nuclear powers. We possess 90% of the world's nuclear arsenals. And that's not necessarily a good thing. That's actually bad. I think we can do something about it.
November 2013. Trump flies to Moscow, supposedly for the Miss Universe pageant. The real purpose of the visit is a secret meeting with Russian President Putin and the heads of the FSB and SVR. Donald stays at the ultra-expensive Ritz Hotel. The hotel room where Trump is placed is literally packed with audio and video surveillance equipment. It's hard to even imagine how many women, and perhaps not only women, with low social responsibility but high fees from the intelligence services visited that room. Afterwards, Trump will declare that he is very pleased with how the pageant went. And indeed, Trump will be satisfied, though not so much with the beauty of the contestants, but rather with the results of his secret meeting with Putin. It was at that moment that Trump received his blessing and support from his handler for his run for the US presidency.
I want to say that no one has such strong feelings for the intelligence community and the CIA as Donald Trump does. Simply no one.
Of course, Putin denied that he met with Trump at that time. But here's the hitch. His meeting with the King of the Netherlands, which was supposed to take place at the same time, was unexpectedly cancelled. The reason was the Kremlin chief's delay. At the same time, Trump only flew back to the US in the morning of November 10th. They say for a whole day and night. Putin and Trump were coordinating their actions regarding the occupation of the White House. After this trip, Trump changed. He became much more confident, clearly feeling the power of something terrifying and formidable behind him. Putin and his FSB.
Yes, so if Trump looks like a KGB agent of influence, acts like a KGB agent of influence, and does everything like a KGB agent of influence and treats Putin as his handler, if he acts as a KGB agent of influence, then he is a KGB agent of influence.
What is truly surprising is that Trump doesn't really hide it and openly displays his sympathy for Putin in every possible way. He practically doesn't react to what the Kremlin dictator is doing. How can one not recall the relatives of the passengers of flight MH17 shot down by the Russians on July 17, 2014, in the sky over the occupied Donbass? Grief-stricken relatives wrote an open letter to Trump, bewildered as to why, at the Helsinki meeting, knowing that Putin was involved in the tragedy, he fawned over him so much.
Why do you think that President Trump trusts me and I trust him? I trust him completely. He defends the interests of the United States of America. I defend the interests of the Russian Federation.
There is an explanation for this. At that meeting, Putin gave Donald his blessing. He said, yes, I wanted Trump to win the presidential election in the US. And he added, overall, I am satisfied with our first meeting. In 2016, Trump wins the US election. Of course, not without the help of handlers from Moscow. And
So in one of the televised interviews, John Brennan, who is no longer the CIA director, put it much more clearly. Once again, he didn't reveal anything that his colleague, the head of British intelligence, personally brought him in a suitcase. But he said, I think Trump is afraid of the president of Russia. The Russians might have something on him personally, something that could complicate his life forever.
at that time, US intelligence accused Russia of cyber attacks and interfering in US elections. I
believe that President Putin truly thinks that he did not interfere in our elections, and he believes what he believes. I side with our intelligence agencies, especially after consulting with their leadership. I trust our intelligence and work closely with them.
Russian cyber hackers helped Donald Trump become president.
Long before he officially made the public announcement that he would run for the presidency, he was of no particular interest to any of us.
Trump won the election in 2016. And then, for almost his entire term, he kept defending himself and insisting that Moscow's interference had no impact on the outcome of the vote.
That's complete nonsense. We weren't acquainted.
The American leader's refusal to publish his tax returns. This once again demonstrates that for many years, he could have received Russian money through various channels.
That was also clearly revealed there. For example, it was publicly disclosed and revealed that one of the prominent Russian bankers who was closely associated and connected with the Republicans was sending money to Trump's campaign. This is a widely documented and well-known fact. He did it through an intermediary, the National Rifle Association, which acted simply as a conduit, taking money from a Russian oligarch and channeling it directly to Donald Trump's campaign. So Trump obviously had contacts and clearly significant financial benefits from Russians. Earlier, I told you that oligarchs close to Putin bought Trump's real estate for $109 million, and they completed the entire transaction in physical cash. This is considered a very serious accusation in America.
Of course, Trump himself categorically denied all accusations of receiving money from the Kremlin. And he would talk about what an outstanding businessman he was.
I've always handled money well. I made a fortune in just 4 days. That is 12 times more. So yes, money is definitely money.
But the only thing is, how do you explain why? It's impossible to reasonably explain why, during the US election campaign, hundreds of thousands of Russian bots were working for him.
At the same time, Russia unleashed an entire factory of bots and trolls on American social networks, and there Trump was being glorified in every possible way, and the people were fake. As it later turned out, they were bot accounts. They actively supported Trump and wrote about it in the comments. This was also later investigated by the FBI.
The Kremlin managed to buy Trump and provide him with an alibi. After he left the White House, a multitude of documents came to light. Thousands of pages. Nuclear programs, intelligence data on China and Iran. Trump got everything he needed from Putin, although he lost the next election and stepped away from politics. At the time, it seemed like it was for good. As for
this impeachment, it really is a continuation of the greatest witch hunt in our entire political history. It's absurd. It's absolutely ridiculous. This impeachment provokes outrage, but you stand your ground. What they're doing is truly terrible.
For one term, Putin lost his influence over the White House. Joe Biden took a clear stance against the aggressor. For 4 years, Russia prepared to bring its agent of influence back into politics, the Red Trump. And unlike his failures on the fronts in Ukraine, in the US, Putin won his special operation. Russia is actively attempting to interfere in the United States presidential elections.
I'll tell you a secret. Yes, we will definitely do it. Just to really amuse every one of you all over there.
Properly. After 2022, when Putin launched a full-scale war against Ukraine, Russia was hit with unprecedented sanctions. The bunker villain became a pariah, and the International Criminal Court even issued a warrant for his arrest. But in 2024, Trump re-entered the game with unprecedented persistence and audacity. He began doing everything possible to help his Kremlin handler. The same old playbook, but with an even harsher agenda of hatred toward Europe and NATO.
It was a loss from day one, and it absolutely never should have happened, and it wouldn't have happened if I had been President of the United States at the time. I'm just trying to clean up the significant mess that Obama and Biden left me.
Today, having returned to power, the Trump administration votes at the UN together with Russia. It refuses to call the war a war. It replaces the word aggression with conflict.
I do not easily trust a great many people, but I think he respects me. And I believe that through me, he will not attempt to take over all of Ukraine.
The blame for Putin starting the war against Ukraine. Trump brazenly and shamelessly shifts onto Zelensky. He doesn't mention Russia at all as the aggressor country. Trump rolls out the red carpet for the bloody dictator, calling him a close friend. In short, he does exactly what the Kremlin wants.
Honestly, it's harder for me to deal with Ukraine. They don't have maps. You know, there will be a significant diplomatic meeting in Saudi Arabia, which is occurring sometime next week. We believe that, in terms of reaching a final settlement, it might actually be considerably more straightforward to negotiate with Russia. It's surprising because they hold all the cards.
Trump's Achilles heel is money and power, which he loves very much. That's why he's willing to cover for his Moscow masters and defend them, as if no crimes were ever committed at all.
Russia wants large-scale trade with the United States. Once this catastrophic and bloody carnage is finally over, and I agree, there is an extraordinary opportunity to create numerous jobs and significant economic wealth. Its potential is truly limitless.
The US ruling elite is well aware that their president is deeply dependent on the Kremlin. But their status as a world power does not allow them to openly admit it. At the same time, Putin has damning compromat on Trump. One wrong move, and the entire career of the US president will be destroyed.
By the way, Putin's unapologetic brazenness continues because he's been demonstrating this bold behavior all year. He just forcefully kicks the door wide open to Trump, so to speak. Basically, the more time passes, the more convinced I am that there really is some Epstein compromat on Trump, and it's so explosive that it allows him to do whatever he wants with Trump. Anything at all, he can twist him around his finger.
Recruitment, money, and blackmail. Pompous, greedy, and narcissistic, Trump became an easy victim of the Kremlin's tricks. And now it's no longer a question of whether you believe in the various versions and evidence. There is something more important. It's the concrete actions and behavior of the current US president. And all these actions speak far more eloquently than any evidence.
Thousands of people are dying every week, and President Putin wants to end this ongoing conflict. Just as I would. Thank you, Mr. President.
Cutting military aid to Ukraine. Support for a peace agreement written in the Kremlin and more resembling Kiev's capitulation. Threats to his former allies in the Democratic camp. Territorial claims against NATO countries. Greenland, Denmark, and Canada still haven't recovered from the shock. Trump is literally destroying the entire world order. And at the same time, with a straight face right in the White House, he hangs up his photo with Putin in Alaska. They say he used to be more cautious. He kept it in his desk and only bragged about it occasionally. Everything secret sooner or later becomes known. Given all the facts presented, the theory about Agent Krasnov stops being just a conspiracy theory. Isn't that right? I want to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. We do not aim to mislead, but simply put the emphasis on humor. Please take this with a smile.